difficult because you don't want to wait too long. Like, you don't want to wait fucking 20 years and then come out with it. Because...
Why not? You just release a book or a documentary. Then you can make more money. Welcome to another episode from Takedowns to Breakdowns with A&P, and today we're here to talk about Children of Bodom. For those of you that don't know, a couple of days ago, the three remaining members of the band did an interview where they open up the book on the band, on themselves, on their relationship with 𝗙𝗥𝗢𝗪𝗡𝗏, why did the band break up, and everything that led to that moment. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of that interview, I want to ask you, is this needed? Was this interview needed? How do you feel towards this interview?
I feel like it was needed in a way. A lot of people wanted to know, like, what was the reason why, you know, the whole breakup of the band. So it's good that now they have that explanation. It's good that they know exactly what happened. So I feel like from a fan's perspective, and the fan that's been wanting to know what happened and everything, Does
this give it closure?
This gives closure for fans of Children of Bodom.
What they said is that the story that was out there, the truth that was out there was Alexei's truth, because he was the only one doing interviews. He was the only one telling his side of the story on why the band broke up or why did he leave the band. So the band felt that their side of the story was never heard, and perhaps, according to them, that's the truth. That what Alexei was saying was not necessarily full-on blown truth. And now they wanted to set the record straight and let the fans know exactly what went on.
And it turned into more of like, you know, a he said, well, in this case, a he said type thing. And obviously he's not here to really defend those claims of it being, you know, his truth and stuff. So I feel on that, but it's not their fault that he's not here to really
say his piece.
Right? I think... There's good in you know, the whole story of what they said, and then obviously there's some bitterness in the story too for fans, I guess.
I feel like there's always three sides to every story. There's yours, mine, and the truth.
Exactly. I feel like some of theirs is I always take it as, if I don't know the full story and I don't know the actual truth, I'll take some of Alexei, I'll take some of theirs, and I'll
put it all together.
And I'll put whatever the similarities are. That's the truth.
You try to find the truth within both stories,
exactly,
with the commonalities of both stories. Personally, even before we get into the nitty-gritty here, I'm not sure that I needed that closure. For me, at the end of the day, he's gone. The band broke up. That's it.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit...
But I also feel like, you know, when it comes to Children of Bodom, me and you, we're not like...
I mean, there's some diehards out there.
We were only...
We came in late on that.
We came in very late.
On that boat.
We came in very late. So, obviously... For a breakup, yes, we're still very big fans, but we came in very late. Some people, you know, have such an attachment to the band that they really wanted to know.
I know, but my issue is when the person that you're telling your side of the story is not there to kind of counterbalance that story that you're telling. I mean, even though we have his version of the events, because he did tell us what his version of the. I don't know. I'm not super comfortable with it. I'm just being honest with you. In my opinion, it wasn't really needed. In my opinion, this is scratching a niche that some people have, but it comes across a little bit voyeuristic in terms of you wanting to know something that is really none of your business, regardless of how big of a fan you were. Some things maybe should have been left as they were.
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
Listen, I agree. You know, I don't know. These guys, they
have the right to say their piece.
They have the right, but I'm happy that they took at least a year, because you don't want to say like 2 months after the guy died,
or the next day or whatever.
Or the next day. I'm glad they waited at least a year.
A year and a half.
They could have waited a long time by not even doing it, but if they really thought that it was their, you know, they want to say their truth, so they come out and they do it. It's good that they waited that time. They waited for the wound to kind of like not fully heal,
but at least to not be raw.
But yeah, like it has bandages on it.
Okay, I agree. I'm with you on that. So in Cole's notes, because we're not going to go through everything that they said in the interview. The interview is freaking long, so there's a lot of things being said.
Yeah.
But in the Cole's notes of this interview, they paint the picture of Alexei as a man of rock and roll. So, but instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll was alcohol, drugs, and rock and roll. That was kind of the life. And that's kind of what took a toll and what led to the band breaking up, because his behavior on tour as far as drinking was concerned and other things were concerned, it just, the relationship started to deteriorate in two different fronts. On one front, it started to deteriorate because of his health and how he managed his own health. And believe it or not, if you're on a tour bus and if you're in this brotherhood and you see one of your brothers kind of self-imploding,
You got to look out for them.
it's hard for you not to, because it impacts you as well.
Exactly.
Because when you go on stage, I know there was some issues, not recently, but there were some issues before where his performances were impacted by his drinking and abuse and substance abuse, and you go on stage and you feel like you're giving the fans less than what they deserve. So that also puts a negative perspective on yourself, because you're part of that band, you're part of that big picture. But so on one side of their story, the breakup really came from his substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, whatever the case was.
It's totally understandable, though.
That side is understandable, but I don't think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, in my opinion. Based on what I read from the interview and what I'm reading between the lines, because Alexi wanted, Children of Bodom is an LLC, so they're a corporation.
Yeah.
So they're a corporation, and then their corporation pays the band members as almost like employees of that corporation. That's kind of how they were set up. And Alexi wanted out of that corporation. He wanted to be paid separately. He wanted to be just a contractor. So you pay me for my royalties of the music. When I go on tour, the promoters who are booking the tours pay me directly for my performance, for my role in this tour, and then you guys deal with all the back end. He wanted out, and I think that wanting out is not, he wanted out but still be in it. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. He kind of wanted to be independent but move into his parents' basement. It was a little bit of that, and I think that rubbed them the wrong way. They felt betrayed. Because this is my opinion based on,
because they put up with all the drinking and everything.
They stood by him through thick and thin,
and then
they feel like he's now doing them wrong, because he was saying that he was broke, that he didn't have money, that the LLC was not paying him for the tours and the concerts. So it was like, well, what's the point? What's the point of performing if I'm not going to get paid? So he was throwing, things like that around. The album Hexed, which was the band's last album, was at risk of never being released, because he was like, oh, I don't want to be in the band anymore. I don't want to do anything anymore. But the band already had taken money from the label in advance of the making of the album. So they're like, well, we're going to get sued if we don't release an album. So at that point, he felt like, now you're forcing me to do an album, even though I don't want to do an album. So I feel like the gripe of that relationship, the breaking up of that relationship, started with money. That's where it started.
I think it started, to be honest, I think it started with the, obviously putting up with stuff like the alcohol and stuff.
No, they feel like they did their part and they stood by him.
They stood by him as a brother.
But then they feel like that
their brother is taking them for granted and stabbing them in the back now.
There's a little bit of, because he also tried to go to court and get the name Children of Bodom registered under his name.
Yeah,
but it already belonged to the LLC.
But now, like, I understand. Like, I understand what the anger is about. From these guys.
It's a love relationship gone wrong. It
Exactly.
really is. It really is, because there was love from all of them towards each other. And then they feel, what you just said, they feel like we had his back through all the bullshit that he put us through with his alcohol abuse and all those issues.
Yeah.
And now he wants to jump ship and kind of leave us in a really tough position. So eventually they agreed to let him be outside of that LLC and just get paid. And I think that's how they did the last tour. And that's how they did the last shows when they announced that the band was going to break up. And he did stay sober through those shows. They wanted him to go to rehab. Apparently he didn't want to go, but he went to see a doctor. He was diagnosed with diabetes. He was putting on some medication. The last tour that they did in North America, he wasn't healthy at all. I went to the show in Toronto. He was skin and bones. He wasn't healthy. Anybody with two eyes could see that. But they were able to convince him that, hey, if we're going to do this, if we're going to finish off this Children of Bodom dream that we all had at one point in time, we got to do it right. So he was able to clean up his act and get on board, but he was outside of that LLC already at that time. So both parts compromised. He compromised by cleaning his act, and they compromised by allowing him to be on the outside and almost getting paid as a contractor.
Yeah.
And that's how they were able to finish the Children of Bodom tour, name, the last shows, all of that stuff. The timing for this interview, the timing for perhaps for some will be soon still, you think it's gone enough?
I think it's respectable because you don't want to wait too long. Like, you don't want to wait fucking 20 years and then come out with it. Because...
Why not? You just release a book or a documentary, then you can make more money.
Nah.
But then it would cheapen all up.
That cheapens everything, and the guy's been dead for like 20 years.
Yeah,
But waiting that year shows, listen, we're not going to go right away because still respect. Obviously, he's a brother, so we have to respect. And then
They just want to put all the cards on the table.
they just want to,
Put their side of the story.
because all they hear is his side of the story. No one hears their side, so they want to kind of put it out there.
Because Alexi said that the reason why the band broke up was because they didn't want to tour anymore because of their families, didn't want them. And they said, like, he put our families in a position where our family's always been supportive of us being on the road. That's not why we broke up. So they felt like their own families were thrown under the bus to cover up for something that was happening that wasn't being portrayed as something completely different. So I can understand that there's why there's love for this man, because it is, like you said, their brother. At the same time, I feel like there was a little bit of resentment, and it's impossible not to.
It's impossible not to have. So obviously, I feel like when hate comes from somebody, not hate, because you can obviously never hate someone you spent so much time with, but like you said, the resentment. I see that in resentment of somebody, more truth comes from it. A lot of dirty secrets come out that maybe shouldn't have ever come out. So that's why I believe a lot of the stuff they said, because it's also a 3v1 type situation. And whenever, even in friend groups, whenever someone leaves a friend group on bad terms and they believe it was everyone else, but in real circumstances it was them, not everyone else, it kind of goes back to the whole he said.
I know, but the story's kind of there. Everybody knows Alexi's
Everybody knows
issues
his-
with alcohol and all that.
Exactly.
So it's not like
So
they're
it's not like
inventing
they're
a story that you've never heard before.
Exactly, though. So it's hard to really go against to what they were saying and just, what they're saying is just spite. No, a lot of what they're saying is stuff that we already know. We know his story from him, and we now know their story. Take whatever's very obvious, and also take whatever is very similar from each story, put that bitch together, and you got yourself that true story.
I don't disagree with you.
I think that's exactly what you have to do.
They also announced they're planning on doing a museum, a Children of Bodom museum.
I would go.
I think that's really cool. To do something like that, I think it's really cool.
And that shows that, not really, obviously he's going to be part of that museum.
Of course. There's no Children of Bodom without Alexi Laio. Like,
so, obviously there's not full-on spite, because he's, if you had full-on spite for him, or, you had that
erase
grudge,
him from the history of the band.
No, you have that grudge of him, you wouldn't even do the museum, because you know for a fact you would have had to put him in there. But...
No, I don't think that's the case. I think they still love him as much as they've always loved him.
Exactly.
It's almost like...
That's why it's respectful that they waited this year.
The way I read that interview, it almost felt the way a parent feels towards their kid when their kid does something that disappoints them. A father never loses his love for his son or his daughter. Never.
Doesn't mean he can't be disappointed.
But doesn't mean he can't be disappointed. Doesn't mean he can't be heartbroken. It doesn't mean he can't be sad about it.
That's what I feel like they had. They put up with him just like a father would. They put up with him for so many years, but they still have that love for him.
But they put up with him also for their own gain. Let's keep it real here a little bit too.
Okay.
So
but
nobody's an angel here.
But no one ever. Literally,
Nobody ever is.
No one's an angel.
No, okay.
I can name a couple.
All right.
But no one is an actual angel. But still, listen. Even though it's your own gain, you come to a tipping point at some place.
I agree with you. There's going to be a point where enough is enough.
Where enough is enough, and that making that extra dollar is not worth putting up with somebody. Yeah. But they did, because they're his. That's the brotherhood of.
And
I
think
band.
Maybe they felt that if the band breaks up, that's going to be the wake up call that he needs to clean himself up.
Exactly.
Maybe that's the shock that he needs to see that life is not what you think life is. You know what I mean? Maybe there was a little bit of the reasoning behind it too. I don't know. My only issue with this whole thing is, did I wanted to know? Did I needed to know? Me personally, Not really. I could have lived without.
You should also...
Sometimes there's things better left unsaid.
For me at least, I didn't need to know. Now that I do know, does it change my look on him? Not
or
really.
the band? Not really.
I still love the band. I still love him as a musician and a vocalist.
Oh, and what he did for music in general.
And I feel like, was it needed? In my life, not really. But in other people's life, that's what I think of of others. And I'm thinking...
The hardcore fans?
Of the hardcore fans that wanted to know. And I'm happy that they now know. I'm happy that they waited that year because it's very respectful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's way more respectful that you wait that year and you just do it in an interview than wait 20 years and make a fucking book about it and make the money off the book. So I think it's a lot...
And I think they tried to be on that interview as respectful for his memory as possible. I don't disagree with any of that, but
they really threw his name around, stepping on. They said stuff that we all know. You know, it's stuff that we know. Some stuff we didn't, but stuff we know.
And it kind of, nothing.
At least some stuff I didn't know.
I know it didn't seem out of left field.
Exactly.
I wasn't shocked by anything. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of played into something that like you think that would have happened, and that it happened. You're like, I'm not really surprised.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
So it's kind of that. This whole thing, I think
the whole time. By the way, I was reading the interview. I was like, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. The whole time I was like, nothing was like, no, really.
I think to end off this video, I just want to say that like the band now, it can fully, rest. He can rest. The band can rest. You know, now we have everything that. Because a lot of bands, when they break up or the lead singer dies, you don't really get that closure. You feel like the band never got that closure as like an actual musician, like the project itself. I think
it's there.
Something that not many bands get to have. This band finally got closure.
All right.
There's no
loose ends.
There's no loose ends. There's people who were like wish that music would come back, but I feel like there's no loose ends, so obviously,
just leave it as is.
You want to leave it as it is. We have his story, we have their story, we have the true story, which is just
somewhere in the middle,
the mix of both stories that is common, and we have the music, and now we'll have the museum. I think once the museum is there, people are visiting the museum. I think that's when the band fully takes its spot. It's already taken its spot, but I think that's when the band fully takes its spot on the Mount Olympus. It sees the gates of Valhalla opening up, and all the other bands that have gone the way of the dodo bird are there waiting for them with beer and good ass shredding.
All right, I can't say it any better than you. And on that note, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Did you get closure from the story? Too soon? Not soon enough? How do you feel about this interview? How do you feel about what has come out now? What has transpired as far as Children of Bodom is concerned? Hit us up in the comment section, and we'll see you guys at the next video.
See ya.